Live. Hello, welcome once again to another Pro Football Spot Seahawks Google Hangout. We're going to be doing these probably fortnightly at least from here on in until the end of the season, hopefully, which is end of January, start of February for the Seahawks. Tonight, as always, pretty much always, I'm joined by Ken over in Madison. How you doing, Ken?
Doing good, Stuart. Yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just counting down the days until it all starts again, to be quite honest, because when the season gets going, there's never more than 2-3 days between games in the NFL, so we're starting to get rolling a bit now. We'll start off. Obviously, we haven't spoke since before the Green Bay game. Before we get onto that Green Bay game and all that come with it, what do you think the state of play is for the Seahawks 3 games in?
Well, this win over the Bears is a definite lift. I think it's good to finally get Cam Chancellor back. It was good for him to realize the front office wasn't going to budge, so just come back, help the teammates in any way he can. And the sentiment that I was seeing as soon as he came back, that everyone was just trying to move forward, and there wasn't a lot of divisiveness in the locker room, which was good to see. And just a big momentum boost to get him back on the defense, and now to finally get that first win out of the way and a manageable game this Monday night to get back on track to 500. Let's not forget the first 2 opponents were pretty good. I know the Rams are definitely a team on the rise, and of course Aaron Rodgers and the Packers look really good. But to get that first win out of the way, get some momentum going, it's very encouraging for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think the win was encouraging more than it was needed and encouraging in the way it came. Obviously, the shutout. I mean, Jimmy Clausen, I don't think he went over 50 yards passing. I think he was 46, 47 yards. So I think it was encouraging after what was, as you said, a pretty tough start to the season with not only 2 road games, but coming up against the best quarterback in the league, no question, and probably the best front 4 in the league as well, with a team that just seemed to just play up. Seem to play up to us rather than us playing down to them, because as you see what the Rams have done since, I mean, their offense has failed to get over the 50-yard line more often than not. So, but yeah, look at them. We got obviously Detroit coming up on Monday night, Cincinnati, then back home with the Panthers, and then we got the 49ers, which could be a blast if Kaepernick carries on throwing. Although we haven't got Tyrann Mathieu for him to throw to, so that could be something to watch. What were your thoughts on the performance and the loss in Green Bay 10 or so days ago? Were you disappointed in any aspects, or was it just something that you saw coming? Because I know you predicted us to lose on the last hangout. I nearly got booted from the hangout.
But unfortunately, it turned out I was right. The Packers just came out really strong. I thought their run defense wasn't going to be as good as it turned out to be. There's just an incredible amount of energy that they came off the line of scrimmage. It just looked completely mismatched between their defensive line and Seattle's offensive line. Give a lot of credit to B.J. Raji, who's really looking like he's finally deserving of a first-round pick all those years ago. And other guys in the defensive line who are pretty much no-names like Mike Daniels and even Mike Neal, just the push that they have. It still highlights how far Seattle's offensive line has to go, both run and pass protection. There's just a lot of inexperience there, and I think the Packers capitalized on the energy at home to just get a little bit of edge over those inexperienced guys. Going up against Aaron Rodgers, who's playing at the top of his game right now, there's no rust on his game right now. It's going to be tough for any secondary to stop him, and I don't even think Cam Chancellor in that game would have limited Aaron Rodgers in any single way, because he was fitting some footballs in some pretty tight windows that Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor combined could not cover together. So just a good overall performance by the Packers. Seahawks actually had momentum in that third quarter. I thought they were going to be able to tie it up or maybe take the lead, and it just kind of died at some point. And some of the play calls, I didn't really like the jailbreak screens that went nowhere. But Russell Wilson looked good out of the pocket, and I think that's going to be a trend going forward. I know he's good with his legs, but even in the pocket, he's still a pretty decent passer. So I think that should be a trend going forward. Just open up the passing game more, especially if Marshawn continues to rack up the injuries. So there were some encouraging things, some not so encouraging things. But I think it just points to right now the Packers being the best team in the NFC right now.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with most of that. I think the O-line really did, especially in the first half, the first probably 20 minutes of the game, they really did struggle against Mike Daniels, Raji, and obviously Clay Matthews coming from the linebacker position as well. They just did not get anything going. Lynch was bottled up again for the most part. Obviously, we never know, he might have been injured, but obviously never going to know that. Aaron Rodgers has played out of his mind. I think Phil Simms said on Sunday night during the game that it's the best quarterbacking performance he's seen. He might have said ever, but it's Phil Simms, so he probably doesn't realise what he said because I don't think he thinks about what he says. He just opens his mouth and hopes for the best. But yeah, I think the start of the second half was really encouraging because obviously we saw Wilson keep a few of the options and get like 60, 70 yards with his legs. He got some big plays to complete the touchdown to Doug Baldwin, obviously. And it as you said, the momentum seemed to be in pointing in the direction of the Seahawks. But Aaron Rodgers, as you said, is fresh. There's no rust. There's no injury lingering. It doesn't seem. He was mobile. He was moving all around in that pocket. There was 3 or 4 times when Averill, Bennett, Irvin, Frank Clark, Cassius Marsh were in his back pocket, and he squirms out and bombs it 20 yards to Randall Cobb or Richard Rodgers or whoever else was catching balls for him that night. It was a pretty impressive quarterbacking performance that saw the Seahawks go to 2-0. But as we saw this most recent Sunday, it was encouraging. You spoke about the absence of Cam against Green Bay. A few days after, 2 or 3 days after later, Cam Chancellor decided to end his holdout, flew from LA. Don't know why he was in LA, and returned to the fold, ended his 60-odd whatever day, however long it was, holdout. What were your thoughts on his return, and were you surprised to see him, Dion Bailey made way? I don't think he's been claimed by the Jets yesterday. So first off, with the Cam part, were you happy to see him back, surprised to see him back at that juncture? Or?
For such a good player, it's always good to see him come back. But when I first read his text message that he had sent to Stephen A. Smith, I believe it was, I was a little upset, a little bit jarred by what he was trying to say. You know, I'm going to go help my teammates, and God forgives, why can't I, and all that stuff, and labeling him and Marshawn being the guys leading the mission. And there's a little bit of a stretch you can make there because both of them had contract issues, and Marshawn got what he wanted. And, you know, I'm sure Cam's going to try and make that extend to him after this season. So initially I thought, you know, the team really could have used you, Cam, in the first 2 weeks against some tough opponents, some tough games that might mean a lot going forward. And at the same time, it's putting all those contract issues aside, wait till the off season and not extend it, because we had heard several times in the off season that he was prepared and possibly could sit out the entire season, which was going to be huge. So it's good for him to realize that the front office was not going to budge, and it's better to just put the pads on, help the team out, and really prove that you're deserving of some money. I mean, we've seen what guys like Darrelle Revis can do with 1-year contracts and just being up to the highest bidder. And I'm sure Cam Chancellor can have that, follow that lead if he so chooses. So it's just proving that he's going to be a good player and command that type of money. So good to have him back for sure. And then
the Cam thing was a relief because there was something missing, whether it was just presence more than anything, more than playmaking from Cam. It's just his presence back there. Just seems to fit more when you watch them. Obviously against Chicago, you watched them just look more like the Seahawks. Obviously the team was a little lesser than Aaron Rodgers led Packers, but it was a relief. It was, as you said, the text message was a bit strange, but it's not the only strange text message in reference to God that's probably been come out of this VMAC this off season. So we'll probably let that one slide, but. Yeah, it's something which is probably going to crop up come March, April, come the spring. So as it is, he come back. But I think I didn't expect him to come back. If I thought he'd be back by the Green Bay game, he wasn't back, so I kind of had written him off for most of the season. So I was quite happy to see him come back so soon, in relatively soon anyway. But yeah, as I said, the other part, Dion Bailey was cut to make. Were you surprised that it was Bailey who made way? Because obviously we still got two fullbacks. We picked up McCrary, is it, from the Chiefs as well? I know we give up a draft pick, but he would probably seem pretty dispensable. Stephen Terrell as well would probably seem pretty dispensable. But to cut someone who started for you 2 weeks prior, were you surprised?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised. Like you just mentioned, there are other options that seemed a little bit more logical, but I don't know if it's a question of the Seahawks not seeing Bailey having good enough instincts to survive on the Seahawks depth chart or pick up enough tools of the trade to make himself better. I can only speculate on that kind of stuff. But now that you got Cam back, and it's also a question of just maybe Bailey getting a chance to prove himself elsewhere if the Seahawks somehow deem that he's ready to start and there's just no room for him now. It's going to be tough for them to have expensive backups. We saw Jerron Johnson this past offseason getting a chance with the Redskins, and we can see that happen with other backups because the roster is pretty loaded. So it's tough to keep all the good guys. It's still a bit of a question mark because guys like Terrell is still hanging around. But at the same time, as soon as Chancellor comes back, that opportunity is gone for a guy like Bailey.
Yeah, I think it's quite telling that he was picked up straight away, pretty much, by the Jets, which is quite telling of what the rest of the league thought of how he looked in preseason and how he looked, mainly in week 1 because he was benched pretty much in week 2. So yeah, I was quite surprised it was Bailey because I thought it might be Tuku Afu or you do something with Terrell, who is injured at the minute. Obviously, we don't know how serious it is. It clearly isn't that serious because they still haven't done anything with his injury status. But yeah, I was surprised it was Bailey. I'm happy and glad he's got a shot in the league. I believe the roster spot he took on the Jets was Ronald Martin, who we cut at the 53 cut down. So that's a bit of a weird irony that Dion Bailey's cost Ronald Martin 2 jobs in the space of 6 weeks. So, but yeah, Cam coming back, he's a different player to Dion Bailey. They obviously saw something which I didn't agree with. Maybe his mentality was somewhat mental, was affected by the slip in St. Louis. But if that doesn't happen, it'd be strange if he got kicked off a one-on-one team having won the game that he started. But it's all hypothetical. It's all in hindsight. So now we move on with Cam and Terrell when he's back, probably in the next couple of weeks. Deshaun Shed again. He stood out a few plays, particularly on the kickoff return at Chicago, and he looks like someone whose versatility is going to be massive this year, with Jeremy Lane probably not being back this year. So, but yeah, I was quite surprised. I was relieved by Cam coming back and surprised by it being Bailey that made way. Sunday, obviously, we saw the first win, the first meaningful win for the Seahawks in about 9 months since the Green Bay championship game. What were your initial thoughts on the performance? Obviously, a shutout coming off the back of 2 losses is quite impressive, but then you have to give that an asterisk, seeing as the quarterback was Jimmy Clausen and he didn't have Alshon Jeffrey to throw to. What were your thoughts on the win?
Exactly. When those weapons are gone, even Jay Cutler, most of the time he's a decent quarterback and he'll make those big mistakes that don't make him elite status, but he's still a good quarterback overall. So when those guys are missing and the Bears offense can only really rely on Matt Forte, it's not a recipe for success. And I was glad the defense was able to hold firm and not allow really anything at all. But again, I think Jeffrey would have presented a much better challenge for the secondary. And with him gone, you could really focus on alienating the big Martellus Bennett, who only had I think 4 receptions, I believe it was. And he's a good mismatch.
15 yards. He was my fantasy football tight end. So I was really happy with that.
But yeah, limiting him after the big type wide receiver is gone, that's always going to help. I think the pass rush could have been a little bit better. I know the Bears actually got their first sacks of the year, and we only had a couple. And that's just kind of problematic. I know you can give some credit to the Bears offensive line. I think a couple of guys are really coming along on that unit, but still, the the depth that defensive line that the Seahawks have, I expected a little bit more out of that. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously Marshawn Lynch is definitely a concern, making his way out late in the first half and then not being able to play really at all in the second half due to the hamstring pickup, which is it's really worrisome because you never know how long these injuries are gonna last, if they're gonna nag him for the entire season. At the same time, Thomas Rawls really stepped up, which is really encouraging, being an undrafted rookie, now making a big splash. And then, of course, you always got Fred Jackson as that third down back role. So they're going to be fine at the running back position. It still comes down to offensive line, though. It's all about protection and giving Russell Wilson some good time to find his wide receivers. A little bit encouraging, of course, getting Jimmy Graham and even Jermaine Kearse involved, but there still needs to be some gradual progression, I think.
Yeah, I think, first off on the Lynch thing, I think they've said, I think Adam Schefter put out today that it's 50-50 for Monday. So, and with Cincinnati and Carolina coming up after that, and even the Niners, the defense is not that bad. I know they give up 40, but Kaepernick did spot on 21 of that. So, yeah, you probably got to think big picture hit with Marshawn Lynch heading into a game with a pretty ordinary looking run defense. With the hot hand in Thomas Rawls, you've got obviously the steady Fred Jackson. Maybe it's a decision that you just make with the big picture in mind, but we'll see what happens Monday night. O-line continues to be a bit of an issue early in games. It was a similar story, I thought, to the Green Bay game the week before. In the second half, they were not many issues apart from that one drive where McPhee got back-to-back sacks. After that, it was pretty clean. Maybe the Bears started to ease up a little bit. They've been accused of that in the past, I know. But, yeah, I think the O-line looked better in pass protection. They're run blocking and pass protection when the week before it was probably arguably the other way around, especially in St. Louis as well. So it's getting there. It's encouraging again. They won. The defensive side looked sound. Frank Clark showed out for the first time this year with a couple of aggressive tackles. I think you could put them. I think he threw down Matt Forte at one point. So yeah, it was encouraging. It's getting there. They've got another winnable game. You'd look at it as a winnable game the way the Lions looked on Sunday night again this Monday night. So hopefully it'll be 2-2 by this time next week. But the performance against Chicago, yeah, it was basically encouraging. You touched on him earlier, Jimmy Graham. After all the talk coming out of the Green Bay game where he was frustrated or pissed off and all that stuff, which seemed to have little to no background or anything concrete to it, it's just journalists putting words out there to get some clicks. It looked like it was quite. That word again, encouraging to see how involved he was in the offense. I think he got the first Russell Wilson pass of the day went to Graham. So, what were your thoughts on how he looked on Sunday?
It was great. I mean, to see him at the top of the statistics in the wide receiver column, that's what you want. That's what you're kind of expecting when you bring in a big target receiver / tight end like Jimmy Graham. So 7 receptions on the 8 targets. It's good that they're being efficient in finding each other, Wilson and Graham, and of course getting the touchdown, being that scoring threat, and just being so tough to tackle. I think that's so dynamic of a Bears defense who, in the past is known for some good defenses, and I think they're kind of sliding a little bit, but still not a terrible defense. It's just kind of a really rough start for them, and I think they're just going into full rebuilding mode, even though they have a couple of decent pieces. But it's good to see Graham being physical, getting open in space, and creating more opportunities for himself. I think that's got to be a definite priority, using an asset like Graham to the most extent that you can. You can't keep him in a secondary role. I know the running game is still the Seahawks' forte, but when you have such a weapon like Graham to extend the field of play and get some good red zone threats, you got to use him, and I think we did see that in week 3.
Yeah, because if he times his jump better at the end of the first half, he's got 2 touchdowns. But he mistimed his jump slightly. Allen Ball got the leverage on him. the ball went incomplete. Now, keep it on Jimmy. What were you surprised of how quiet he was against Green Bay? He's only targeted 2 or 3 times. Didn't have, I think, he had 1 catch. If he did have a catch, were you surprised? Because obviously in the past he has been a bit of a needle in the side for the Packers defense. Were you surprised at how little they got him involved?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, just looking at what the Packers defense had to offer against him, it's kind of an undersized secondary, and then of course Clay Matthews being that key inside linebacker now. He's better at pass rushing and not as good in coverage. So I really thought Graham was going to be this X factor for the Seahawks to pull out a win in Lambeau, and for some reason they just weren't finding him in open space. And I don't really know what that comes down to, if that's the philosophy of what the Seahawks were trying to do, get the wide receivers more involved on mismatches with guys like Casey Hayward at corner and Quentin Rollins and stuff like that. So I don't really know what Darrell Bevell and company were thinking when they were trying to attack this defense, because Russell Wilson was still able to move the ball on several good drives, but at the same time, when you got Jimmy Graham sitting on the far sideline and he's not going to be able to do anything, it's kind of concerning. So with the mismatch that he posed with the Green Bay defense, it just seemed like he should have been more of a priority. So I guess credit the Packers for doing whatever they could do to try and limit him. And at the same time, I didn't see a concerted effort out of the Seahawks to try and make Jimmy Graham a headliner.
Yeah, I was quite surprised already to think he was going to have a big day. But I can't see anything. Can you see me, Ken?
Yeah, I can see you, but you're frozen.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's pretty good. Yeah, I was really surprised because all you need to do is go back and watch the Saints game, the playoff game, the Sunday night game last season. Jimmy Graham just destroyed. I know it's Tramon Williams who isn't there anymore, but he just destroyed the Packers defense, and it doesn't take much to dig it up and watch that and go from there. So yeah, I was surprised. I was really encouraged. Again, that's that word against the buzzword of the day for me, of how he looked against. It looked like I didn't watch every snap he took in New Orleans, but he did look different. It did look like we were using him slightly differently. Obviously, the touchdown was very Gronkowski-esque of how he caught it in the middle of the field and ran and just barreled over people into the end zone. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. He's on for, if you look at it, really, I only seen 3 games in, but if you look at it, he's on for a good stat line at the end of the season. So it'll be something to watch going forward. Monday night, obviously, we've got another home game. We've got the Lions coming to town. Golden Tate's coming back to town. That should be fun. I cannot wait for that. The first catch he makes, he was fantastic on Sunday. I don't know if he caught it, but he tapped Chris Harris on the shoulder, who was celebrating a pass breakup, and told him there was a flag on the play. And it was just classic Golden Tate trolling that he does, like Janoris Jenkins all over again. It was fantastic. The first time he catches the ball this Sunday is going to be fun, because there'll be some chirping, I'm sure. Are you confident of going into the game on Monday night?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what is really ailing the Lions, because they had a pretty solid season last year, and they have all the pieces in place to be successful and try and challenge the Packers in the NFC North, and we're not seeing it thus far. I don't know if there's some rust like with the Seahawks in week 1, and then it's going to shake off eventually. Matthew Stafford and company is going to get it going again. But defensively, I think the losses in the interior defensive line is definitely hurting them early. I know Ndamukong Suh isn't really proving himself in Miami, but he was still a physical presence when he was in Detroit and helping to stuff the run. And yeah, I think they're like 20th in run defense, so I think the Seahawks should be poised to have a really balanced attack, get the running game going like they did against Chicago, and then open it up through the air with some play action, giving Russell Wilson some time to throw, maybe get out of the pocket. I think the biggest asset for Detroit is going to be linebacker DeAndre Levy, and because he's really a captain of that defense. But I don't know, the Seahawks are coming off a good win. It was a little sloppy in the first half against Chicago, but still, there's definite more sense of confidence now, getting the win off their back, and now with Cam Chancellor more solidified after that first whirlwind week of saying he's going to return. Now it's going to be a little bit more calmer. Everybody should be ready to go, and just being on a national stage again, I think should be another key motivating factor, because the last several times we've seen Seattle in Monday Night Football, they just seem to turn on the Jets. And I remember that Saints game. That was one of my favorite games to watch at all times. So they just seem to turn it up a notch on the national stage. So I'm pretty excited. I know the Lions could use a win, but I think the Seahawks definitely got this one. So Stuart had to leave. The search for Stuart continues. Yeah, I know for all those still with us that DeAndre Levy's injury is definitely concerning, but I think for such a good game, and the matchup that he poses with Jimmy Graham should be pretty exciting. I know he's going to try and return for this Week 4 game, and I think there's extra motivation now to try and be a leader on that side of the football. And so I'm really looking for him to be that motivating factor for them, because he got a pretty decent contract. I know it's kind of homerism for me, but he did go to the University of Wisconsin. Pretty underrated guy, and has really proved himself in the NFL. I can't really give an answer for you as to how he was able to elevate his game, because he was a pretty decent linebacker in college, but now just being kind of the captain of that entire defense now, with that defensive line not as potent as it once was. He's a real solid guy, and just for such a big game being on Monday night, the Lions could use that leadership. I think we should expect to see DeAndre Levy see some action and to play in such a big game against a tough NFC opponent. Because as we talked about earlier in the show, the way the Packers have been playing, they're going to just put everyone in the dust. And now as we get Stuart back.
Hello, sorry about that. That was
no problem.
Great ad-libbing. Thanks for doing that. So I'm quite confident looking into Monday, looking ahead to Monday even. Have we gone again?
Yeah, you're frozen again.
Anyway, let's just power on through. I'm quite confident looking into Monday. I think they did not look very good offensively. Obviously, Megatron is still there, so that's always a plus for them. But defensively, they just look a bit odd. I think it's probably the word to use. I can't really put my finger on it because I don't really follow that team very closely. But coming off the back of a home win against the Bears, it's looking I am quite confident. It probably won't be a shutout. That'll be something else to beat those two teams in back-to-back shutouts. But I'm expecting another impressive, dominating, whatever you want to call it, defensive performance. I think Chancellor's going to be maybe more involved, more standing out more than he did on Sunday. I think he's going to be more important. Abdullah looks a decent-looking running back. Unless you got Jaunt, I think he's knocking around. I don't know if he's healthy or not.
He's only got like 22 yards on the year.
Yeah, but he's a bruising back, and he's the sort of player that you need Cam Chancellor to put on his backside as quick as possible. But Abdullah is probably the main threat. Golden Tate is just, as I said, it's going to be a lot of fun, but I am quite confident. As we stand 5 days away. God, that's a long time. 5 days away. What are you looking for us to do on Monday night to be able to win? You might have covered it while I was reloading, but what do you think the Seahawks need to do to win on Monday?
Well, I think they should still solidify the run. I know Marshawn Lynch is 50-50, and whether he starts or not, whoever's in that starting role should expect to get some good carries. There are injuries to Detroit's defense. I know DeAndre Levy, the linebacker I was talking about while you were away, could be poised to return, but at the same time, that's just one guy. So if the Seahawks can really pound the ball, force some guys to get stacked into the box, and then just open up the play-action attack, Jimmy Graham downfield, Jermaine Kearse downfield, Doug Baldwin downfield or in the middle of the field, whatever it is. Balance that running attack with some good play-action fakes. I'm seeing a lot of criticism right now of of fans thinking that the team is just trying to make Russell Wilson too much of a pocket passer and not using his legs as much. But at the same time, if that running game gets going and that play action is going to work, I like Russell Wilson in the pocket at that point. It's just going to be good stuff.
See, that's something I've seen crop up, but differently. I've seen people say that Wilson's protecting his investment, obviously the investment they made. Obviously, he's got $80 million coming in the next 4 years. That seems more likely for what they're doing with Wilson, that he's consciously thinking, he more than likely isn't, 99% chance he isn't. But the argument that he is protecting himself by not keeping the read options, by not is much more likely than whatever reasons you're hearing and excuses you're hearing. The game plan is a certain way against the Packers, against the Bears. It'll probably be a similar way against the Lions, which is why Thomas Rawls is probably the fantasy football pickup to have this week on the Seahawks, if you can grab him. Is this the game where the game we expected Jimmy to have against the Packers? Is he going to have it this Monday night?
Is he going to have a performance like he did in week 2?
No, the performance that we expected him to have against the Packers.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry about that. I think so. I mean, the way Detroit's defense has looked with it being banged up, there's just a big opportunity for Graham to just tear up the middle of the field, especially if Levy can't play, because he poses a good matchup for Graham. We've seen incremental progression, I think, in the first few weeks, getting Graham some more looks. I think that Packer game might be an outlier because the defense was so well prepared for what the Seahawks were going to offer, and they just took Seattle completely out of their game plan. So I think that one's more of an outlier. But with each game, I think the team is figuring out how best to use Graham, how best to find him in open space. And definitely Wilson and Graham are hooking up more now and getting confidence in each other. So I think this game could be quite encouraging, to use that word again, for Jimmy Graham, definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree with all those points. I think because they said coming out of the Green Bay game that he was the first read, he was the main focus of plays that didn't get to him against Green Bay. But on Sunday we saw him get the ball quickly on a lot of plays. Obviously, as I said earlier, the first throw Wilson made was to Graham. It was complete. And then obviously the couple over the middle, the touchdown pass is probably second or third read. I think Brock Heward went into it fantastically, as always, with the chalk talk they do for 710 ESPN in Seattle. He said that the two crossing routes from Curse and Lockett, I think it was, that's where Wilson goes first, but second was to Graham. And when neither of the crossing routes were open, it was Jimmy all the way. And then he put the ball in his hands, and that's what he did, is what they brought him here to do, is to score those kind of touchdowns. Because Luke Wilson had the chance, flash that potential, but it just looks different when Jimmy does it. As we mentioned, Thomas Rawls is probably the buzz name around Seattle. With Marshawn Lynch dinged up after his 106-yard performance or whatever it was on Sunday. Obviously, it's only one game. It's only one game against a bottom half run defense, probably in the NFL. I think that's fair to say. What would it take? What would it take him to do to make you think that he is for real? As people already said, he's for real. He's here to stay. Though after one game. So if he repeats it on Monday night, would that be enough, or is it something over a longer period of time he need to do?
I think if he has another performance like he did on Sunday, that a lot of people are going to label him as for real. I thought he was for real earlier in the preseason. Just the type of style that he runs with, it's almost Marshawn Lynch in the type that's very physical, but again, Marshawn can have that one cut that's just going to break things wide open. And I think Rawls is a little bit a ways from that, but still the way he just is able to initiate contact and just plow through defenses. I know Pete Carroll's really excited about it, and everyone else is really excited about it. So just that type of run style, just smash mouth football, finding the holes and just grinding his way out. That's what makes him stand out. So I think another good performance like that, I think everyone should come around to this guy being another one of those steals that the Seahawks are so good at getting.
another undrafted one. Obviously, after the bowl win, we've had Curse. We had no else have we had undrafted. Who else have we had? I can't remember. I can't think of anything. Obviously, Sweezy was a late round pick, although he does not look great at the minute. Next to Gideon, who looks to be struggling even more. Obviously, Marshall Lynch's injury is probably going to take up a lot of the focus over the weekend as we move on towards the game on Monday night. But on the other side of the ball, there's an injury which could be as pivotal and as big. Brandon Mebane went out of the game quite early, I think. It was near the end of the first quarter. I think he left the game on Sunday. Is that a concern if it's a 2 or 3 week layoff for him? Or do you think Jordan Hill has shown signs that he's taken that step on again that he did look to be taking last year?
It's tough. I love Jordan Hill as a pass rusher out of that defensive tackle spot, but just the sheer size and ability to create a 2-on-1 with Brandon Mebane, just commanding attention of more than one offensive lineman, and the way he can hold that to allow linebackers to come in and make the play. It's not something that should be overlooked. It's kind of an underrated thing, but with those defensive tackles able to command that kind of presence, is really valuable for the rest of the defense in stopping the run. So when he misses significant time, there's definitely effect in that middle of the defense. The linebackers are going to have to be counted on more to try and shed some blockers. And I think the linebackers are capable of doing that, but at the same time, it's just more advantageous to have that big defensive tackle to kind of do the job for them and allow them to be at their best with tackling. So I think it is kind of an underrated loss.
Yeah, I think, as I said, introducing that question, I think it's something which won't get talked about much, but with Abdullah and how they seem to be using him, how he seems to be most effective, it's what Mebane will be there to mop up. So it would be a test for Jordan Hill, and I guess DeMarcus Dobbs and David King will be the ones to step into the rotation if Mebane does miss the game, which obviously we don't know yet because I think they practiced today, so there's no injury report. Obviously, 5 days out of the game. After Monday Night Football, hopefully Tuesday morning, we'll be sitting at 2-2, back in contention, hopefully, of the NFC West and all that comes with that. Then we got the road trip, one of the only early 10 a.m. road trips that the Seahawks face this season in Cincinnati, who held on in the end. It looked like they were going to run away with it against Baltimore, and they ended up holding on a little bit. Obviously, thanks to AJ Green having a day of 200-yard receiving day. What are your initial? Obviously, it's 10 days away, but what are your initial thoughts on the game against Cincinnati?
It's going to be a tough one. I know Cincinnati, with Marvin Lewis being the head coach, it's a grinder of a defense, and even on offense, for all of Andy Dalton's struggles in the postseason, still a very good quarterback, has some good weapons to lean on. And every single week, it seems like one guy on offense is really just having a breakout game, and so you can't really expect who's going to shine and who's going to not. So it's going to be a tough study, at least for the defense, to try and figure out how best to shut them down. Getting pressure on Dalton is obviously the key, and I think it's going to be tough. There's some good offensive linemen on Cincinnati that is going to present quite a challenge, particularly up the middle. So those edge rushers are going to be key. But it's being on the road. It's definitely a tough atmosphere in Cincinnati, and the way they've started out the season is very encouraging for where they want to go.
They early doors, they look like the best non-New England team in the AFC, don't they? They look like the teams to get closest because the Colts just look a mess offensively and defensively. The Broncos, you're just kind of waiting for Manning to hit the cold weather and that to happen again. In Cincinnati, AJ Green looks healthy as well. Dalton's doing his usual September to December stick. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game. It probably makes Monday night that little bit more important, doesn't it, with the game against Cincinnati 6 days later?
Yeah, less preparation time. It's because you know the Bengals are going to want to have a tough game in that one and really just grind out a win in front of their home crowd. And at the same time, Seahawks want to keep their momentum going, but then it's going to be a tough turnaround with less preparation. I think the Seahawks are one of those teams that are capable of going on short rest and still having a good performance, but at the same time, it just plays into Cincinnati's favor. So we'll see how good the Seahawks are against the Lions and really see how much momentum they're going to carry with them. because you could throw away the Bears game because they didn't have any of their offensive weapons, and the Seahawks were a little sloppy offensively, especially on third down. So this Lions game is really going to be a test for the Seahawks to try and get some momentum moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Especially being at home, if you have a 2-game homestand, that's back-to-back home games like this is, and you win both of them, momentum is on your side. Doesn't matter what Cincinnati do. I think they've got the Chiefs on Sunday, which is going to be a tough game, probably. Defensively, it's going to be Dalton and Smith are probably the middle of the pack, the middle of the pack in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. So it's going to be a defensive game. So hopefully they get knocked about a bit and they're feeling a bit woozy Monday morning, and maybe puts them off their game a little bit. Obviously, every week we do the key players to watch. We've got 3 players. Any early thoughts, early decisions on who your player to watch is going to be for Monday night?
Oh, for this weekend, I mean, even if DeAndre Levy of the Lions doesn't play, I'm still going to want to see how Jimmy Graham does. If Levy's in there, that's a great matchup to see how Graham can beat that good linebacker in Levy. And if he's not there, I'm totally expecting Graham to have a field day against the Lions. So Graham's definitely a look. I think in another aspect, I'm kind of looking to see how consistent Jermaine Kearse can be at getting open. Seems every week he's going to get some targets. The next week he's not going to get any targets, and then the following week he's going to go back to good form. So if he can get some consistency, that'll be really encouraging for Seattle's offense. Just another receiving threat on the far side of the field. So I'll see if Kearse can have a little bit of consistency, and of course Thomas Rawls if Marshawn Lynch doesn't go. Can he sustain that success that he had against the Bears? So there are a couple of guys I'm keying in on. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, as soon as you went offense, I'll go defense. I think the first one for me is probably Kerry Williams again, because I think someone put on Twitter earlier today that he's only had 5 targets or 6 targets through 3 games, which is a low number for a cornerback opposite Richard Sherman and his defense in recent years. So it bodes well for how he's performing, obviously. For people smarter than me are obviously keyed in on that. But I think you're probably going to see Megatron lined up opposite Richard Sherman 95% of the time. So he's going to be up against Golden Tate. And we all know what Golden Tate can do. We all know if he catches the ball, you tell him, you don't let him get space because he could burn 20, 30-yard play off a 4-yard catch. So I think Kerry Williams is going to be important. If Brandon Mebane don't play, as we touched on, Jordan Hill is probably going to be quite important because they're probably going to look to get the run game going, get the play action open with Tate, with Eric Ebron, even with Abdullah, who's not too bad as a receiving threat out the backfield. So I think Jordan Hill or Brandon Mebane will be quite important. And on the same level, I think Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. KJ Wright is playing out of his mind, I think, through the first 3 games. I think he's just on another level since he signed that contract at the back end of last season. So I think Bobby Wagner at the second level, he's going to have to plug some holes because the O-line for the Lions doesn't look, it's inexperienced. I think it's similar to the Seattle one. So I think those are my 3 on the defensive side. I'll choose one when I have to choose one for the article. Right, 2 final things. Is there any college players who caught your eye in the last couple of weeks that you want to quickly mention?
Not in the sense that the Seahawks should be keeping an eye on him. I will say that Ohio State's quarterback situation continues to really confuse me. I know there's so much talent at that position that you just expect that if they throw one guy in there, then he's going to do well, and that's somehow not the case. I don't know if it's a case of being that competitiveness, looking over your shoulder every single week, but that one's really been a story for me that just doesn't really make sense. You got so much talent, and yet nothing's really working out thus far, and it's a very tenuous top team in the nation in Ohio State.
Yeah, and the decision the 49ers have made looks sillier by the week, doesn't it? I mean, his coaching is bridging the gap, any talent gap Michigan had before the season, because they really do look a decent unit already. I know they struggled early on, but he looks like he's getting his paw prints all over that team quite quickly. I think for me, the one, obviously he's not going to be a Seahawks because we've got Russell Wilson, but the quarterback at Cal just looks the part. He just looks to have to have the base you can build off, and yet in the next level, he doesn't have the tools that probably other quarterbacks who have gone early have. Well, he hasn't shown them if he has, but he was quite. I watched him against the Huskies last week, and for a defense that didn't give up a touchdown for 6-7 quarters or whatever it was, he did look the part. So he'll be someone I'll be watching to see what he does for the rest of the season, because Hackenberg just looks a mess. Connor Cook, I haven't really seen much of him so far this year. So I think at the minute, Goff could be the first one off the board come April in Chicago next year, the first quarterback. So he's someone who really impressed me playing the Huskies. And then we've got Stanford this weekend. Who have the Badgers got this weekend?
They've got Iowa here in Madison, so it's a good rivalry. They're both in the Big Ten West. Iowa's had a pretty easy non-conference schedule, so this is their first real test, and it's actually a big game early on to see who's going to play either Ohio State or Michigan State in that Big Ten championship.
Are you confident?
Every time the Badgers play Iowa, it just seems it's like the Rams and the Seahawks. When Iowa has to go play the Badgers, they just seem to up their game, and their interior defensive line for years just seems to give Wisconsin's normally good offensive line and running backs problems. And in this case, Wisconsin's quarterback doesn't give me a lot of confidence when the ball has to be placed in his hands and the game is on the line. So if Iowa's rush defense, which has been pretty good thus far, continues to be good against the Badgers, they're going to be in for a tough grinder of a match. It could get pretty ugly.
The Huskies are a really young team, so I'm not expecting much for the rest of the season. I hope they win a couple of weeks, because I'm hoping to go to the Oregon game in 2.5 weeks when I'm over in Seattle. But Stanford, they looked terrible against Northwestern, but they've looked good since. So the Pac-12 is going to be interesting this year, because Oregon just keep getting shellacked every week, and the Sun Devils are not taking the step I don't think most people thought they would take after last year, but it'll be something to watch. Pac-12 is going to. I think the Pac-12 just going to kill each other. Like the AFC North is going to end up killing each other, and it will just be the one who outlasts the rest, not who's better than the rest. Finally, let's get to score predictions. We'll do both games. We'll do both the Lions and the Bengals. What's your score prediction for Monday night? I keep saying Sunday night. Monday night.
All right, this Monday night, I'm saying Seahawks win this one 27-14.
Nice. What's giving the main storyline coming out of that game then? 27-14. Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's going to catch a couple of touchdown passes. Nice. I'm going to stick with 27, but I'm not that confident that they're going to go up and down the field on us twice. I think it'll be 27-10 to the Seahawks. I think their offense just doesn't see. They could obviously click on Monday, but against the Broncos, have got Harris and Talib, and Bradley Roby looks an absolute steal a year on from his draft selection. He looked really good in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I just don't think they've got enough offensively and defensively. I don't think, while they're probably better than the Bears are in the secondary, especially, I think Jimmy could have his night in the Seattle colours. So yeah, I think 27-10. The Bengals 6 days later on the road, early start, making excuses. You see that already.
I am really looking forward to that one. I think the Bengals are going to come ready to play, and Seahawks are going to have a tough time. But I think they're able to outlast the Bengals 2017. Hauschka gets a game-winning field goal late, doesn't give Andy Dalton enough time to mount a comeback drive.
Yeah, I don't see it being a shootout, because I think both defenses are pretty stout in all phases, and I think I'm going to be boring. I think that's probably the smartest bet. It's probably a 2017, 21, even 21-20, 24-21 kind of scoreline. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be hard fought. It's going to be a slugfest in all. I think Jeremy Hill is back healthy, isn't he?
I believe so. But even at the same time, Gio Bernard is a dynamic running back too.
That's what I say. So the two teams look quite similar on paper, because obviously they've spent a lot of draft picks, early draft picks on corners and all the light. They've got Geno Atkins, who looks back to his best, how he did 2-3 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to that game. I'm probably looking forward to that game more than Monday night, to be quite honest, because I think that'll be after the Packers. With the Packers, we didn't have Cam. I think with Cam, that'll be our biggest test, and our biggest test for a while. Because the Panthers, Cam Newton's carrying that team. The Niners are just a joke. I think it's the Cowboys after the Niners. Brandon Weeden. Yeah, I think the Falcons sussed him out quite quickly in that game. So I think it's the next benchmark that the Seahawks got to pass in this season. I think there's the Bengals. If they win on Monday night, which hopefully they will, and they should do. Yeah, I think that's all. If there's anything else you want to cover or bring up, Ken?
No, I think we nailed it.
No? Cool. Right, we'll do one after the Bengals game. I'm actually flying out to Seattle on a Friday, so it'll be before then.
Okay.
So, hopefully that'll be a win against the Panthers, because it's a lot of money, and I don't want to spend a lot. No, I can't wait. I cannot wait to be in Seattle again. It's the best place in the world, to be quite honest. It's the best place I've ever been to. So yeah, that'll be something we'll be looking to do in a couple of weeks. Hopefully Ryder will be back involved if he's not on his way to stardom with his band. So yeah, just wrapping up, just like to thank you once again for joining us, Ken, rushing home from your class. So cheers for that.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
And enjoy the game on Monday night. Hopefully 27 and Jimmy will be what all John Gruden's talking about. Spider 2 wide banana and all.
Oh yeah, hope so.
Yeah. All right. Cheers for that, Ken. See you later.
Have a good one.
Bye.